This morning we have with us as our Convocation speaker on Veterans Day, Rear Admiral David Hahn from the Jesuit High School class of 1981. Admiral Hahn is joined today by his brothers, Mike from the class of 1980, Jeff from the class of 1984, and Chuck from the class of 1987. His nephew Miles is a graduate of the class of 2016. While a student here, he was actively involved in the Jesuit Mass, Student Council, and the soccer team. He's a founding member of the Blue Tide. After graduating from Jesuit, he received an appointment to attend the U.S. Naval Academy. He graduated from the Academy with distinction in 1985, earning a Bachelor of Science degree in Mechanical Engineering. Additionally, he holds a Master of Business Administration degree from George Mason University, and he has completed the MIT Seminar 21 program in International Security Affairs. Admiral Hahn has served our nation aboard multiple ballistic missile carrying submarines in the North Atlantic and Western Pacific. He commanded the USS Pittsburgh and was deployed to the Caribbean Sea and Pacific Ocean. In November of 2016, he became the 26th Chief of Naval Research with responsibilities as Director, Innovation, Technology Requirements, and Test and Evaluation. He's been awarded numerous medals for his service to our country, and he currently resides in the Washington, D.C. area. He and his wife, Nancy, are the proud parents of a daughter and 2 sons. Please join me and give a warm Tiger welcome for the Rear Admiral David Hahn from the class of 1981.
Well, good morning and thank you. In the back, can you hear me? Okay, I'll be watching you guys in the back. So, truth be told, this is my first visit back to Jesuit in 37 years, since my graduation. So it's been a while. Place looks great. Father, thank you for having me, especially on a day that should cause us all to pause and provide a little bit of thanks to those who have gone before you and those who you may join if you choose to serve your country in that way in the military. I want to cover a couple things today. First of all, the 11th hour of the 11th day of the 11th month. That's the basis for Veterans Day. 100 years ago yesterday, Armistice Day. That was when those who were in a hostile conflict put their weapons down and they worked through peace negotiations. What conflict am I talking about? Anybody? Okay, we're going to start again. Good morning. Let's do that again. Good morning. All right, good. 100 years ago, conflict ended. Armistice Day. What was it? World War I. Good. Nicely done. The war to end all wars. The Great War, they called it. 20 million people. 20 million people lost their life in that conflict. So why wasn't that the war to end all wars? What's going on, right? We should think about that. So we're going to spend a little bit of time wandering around the 20th century to get you locked into today in the 21st century and get you caged to the world that you're about to enter. Because there's a lot expected of you as graduates of this institution. Because you have a foundation in leadership that nobody else has. There's a lot expected of you. So I want to make sure you understand the world you're walking into. The Great War, it didn't end all wars because it didn't solve the problem. The fundamental problem is involved in what we call great power competitions. And that's when nation states, for whatever reason, ideologies, economics, they're not happy with the territory they got. Pick a problem set, a religion maybe. They choose to enter into hostile conflict with another nation state. So 20 years after this day, 100 years ago, we're in another world war, another great power competition that ends badly. So these great power competitions form themselves when these nation states are in conflict about those ideologies, those economics, those religions, those things that make folks think that military action is a good answer. Frankly, it's not. And then something happened at the end of World War II. was it? The United Nations. There's an answer from my dad. As usual, he's not right. So it's been that way since I was here, I'm telling you, right? So as we look at the laydown, the geopolitical laydown of the globe, you see these tensions that move across time. World War II, 60 million people. 60 million people died. That's not a good answer to a great power competition. Something changed at the end of World War II that caused this notion of getting into a military conflict to solve our problems to be something that was seen as a last resort. And that's this notion of deterrence. So deterrence comes when nation states believe that some kind of hostile action they're going to take, starting a military conflict, will end very, very badly for them. Right? That wasn't the case at the run-up to World War I. It certainly wasn't the case when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, and it wasn't the case in Europe when Hitler invaded Poland. It wasn't the case. They thought they could win, they thought they could sue for peace, and it would be okay. That changed at the conclusion of World War II. And today, I come to you as a representative of the United States Navy. We've had a big part in that conversation about deterrence across the globe. And that deterrence comes in many forms. It comes in the form of being strong economically, so that if necessary, governments can move those instruments of power, those levers, to cause other nations to understand that this will not go well for you and your people. It also comes in the form of being strong enough as a military, such that anybody who wants to cause a dust-up with the United States Navy anywhere on the globe recognizes that's not going to work out well for them. 70% of the globe is covered in the blue stuff. What's the blue stuff? Good, water, nice, right? 80% of the world's population lives within 200 miles of the coast. 90% of the trade that goes around the planet goes on the blue stuff. It goes on the surface of the ocean. It's incredibly important that your United States Navy keep the surface of the globe, the blue stuff, free for trade. If that doesn't happen, then the existence that we have in America and this notion of perpetuating freedom around the globe, that's not going to happen. All right? So the Navy does that by being out there every single day with ships, aircraft, submarines, in a forward presence in a way that any country who says we're going to cause a problem for the United States or her partners and allies, it's not going to end well for you. So that deterrence has been in place for quite some time. And that deterrence was in place in the next great power competition as we move from World War II into the next one. What do we call the next one? The Cold War. Everybody familiar with that term? Happened before you guys were alive, right? Again, a 20th century thing. I hate to bring it up, right? The Cold War. That ended very differently. We didn't end up in an armed conflict with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union collapsed for a number of reasons, but one principal reason was that deterrence was in effect. And they knew that a military conflict was not going to end well. We all knew that. And so that's our function today as we enter the 21st century and we enter into the next great power competition. You may not believe that one's underway right now. You may think everything's just fine. Well, frankly, it is underway, right? The United States of America, our partners and allies, are in a great power competition with the country of China. That may surprise you. What I ask you to do is kind of pick your heads up, look in the news for things that would give you the indicators that China does not agree with how the United States wants to pursue freedom for people, the relationship between a government and the people who they govern. It's different than, their notion is different than our notion. The idea of privacy, of intellectual property, of laws, ethics, security, prosperity, order are all different. And China's pursuing a global effort to change that world order. So whether you like it or not, you're going to enter a world when you leave Jesuit high school, when you go to college, I hope, when you choose to pursue a career, that you're going to enter a similar world that I entered. Because I left here in the middle of the Cold War. I finished the Naval Academy in the Cold War. I got to my first submarine in the Cold War and pursued that. Then the Cold War ended. That was great. I hope the same thing happens for you all. You leave your college experience, you enter the world, whatever you choose to do, and the world is able to be shaped by your efforts, be them small or large. And that's the foundation that makes you different from everybody else. So leadership, man for others. That's the foundation that was imbued in me when I was here as a student. Now, some of the Class 81 guys who are sitting over here would probably say, Hahn, you were never even paying attention. So I don't know how that happened. But it did. All right, so this is the foundation that is being built upon as you move through life. I'm going to give you 3 things to think about as you go forward when you think about your role as a leader. One is, like this guy here, you can't be sleeping. That guy right there. Yeah, you got him. You can't be sleeping, man. All right, good. And I'll find you if you're sleeping out there, because that used to be me. Okay, so the first thing I want you to think about, right, is you got to be ready. You have no idea when that call is going to come for you. And that call might be something's needed in your family, your community, your business, your unit, whatever it might be. You got to rise to that occasion and be ready to be a leader. How are you going to do that? You're going to do that by paying attention to those role models you have here and the role models you have in your life. I was kidding you about my dad. He's always right. Right? My dad is a role model for me. My brother's a role model for me. My wife, a role model for me. My colleagues, role models in leadership. Watch them. Observe the people around you. Pick out the things that you like of the leaders that you find effective. Figure out how you weave that into your quilt of leadership. The foundation, the backing for that quilt is what's happening here at Jesuit when you go through this institution. You're going to build on that with your experiences and your observations. And you're familiar with what a patchwork quilt looks like? Who's not? It's okay to raise your hand. You're not. You know, a quilt that's like a blanket, and they put different patches of cloth on there that sometimes look different. Now you're getting it, right? Yeah, you're on it. Right. Okay, good. So as you move through life, that patchwork quilt is being built, and it's going to change. And you're going to pick the spot from that makes sense in the situation you're in, and you don't get to choose that situation. It's going to find you. And if you don't rise to that occasion because you're not ready, then shame on you. You're not taking advantage of the opportunity you have by being here from Jesuit. All right, so that's number 1. Number 2, find a partner. You're not doing this alone, right? Believe it or not, none of you is the smartest guy in this room. You might think you are, but you're not. I recognized a long time ago, I'm never the smartest guy in any room. So I find the smartest people, and you understand what they're saying, and you make them your partner. You're going to find partners throughout your experiences in your life, and you got to know when to partner with people because they're like-minded in their principles, in their ethics, in their morals, and then find a guiding compass inside that partnership. So my guiding compass comes from my wife, Nancy, sitting over there, cute lady in the red. Right? That's where it comes from. So I was lucky that partner found me. You may not be as lucky. Find a partner in life that is like-minded and can help you through it, because then you will be a better leader. You need somebody to bounce ideas off of and tell you that you're a knucklehead. All right? My wife does that frequently. I thank her for it. It's our relationship. It's great. We're all married to the same woman. You'll find out soon. All right? So get a partner. Third thing, know the difference between a risk and a gamble. You're going to find yourselves in positions as leaders where other people's livelihoods, other people's health, other people's lives will depend on the decision you make. So know the difference between taking a risk and taking a gamble. You don't want to gamble. So you got to understand the situation you're in. Figure out how you're going to do that so you can understand the difference. My favorite story goes back to World War II on this. A guy by the name of Chester Nimitz. Anybody remember that name? Chester Nimitz. Fleet Admiral Chester Nimitz. Nobody. Wow, the history curriculum needs some work here, Father. No, I'm just kidding. All right, somebody new. All right, somebody back there. All right, we have a Chester Nimitz fan. All right, great. All right, nicely done. Boom. Well played, sir. He has no idea who Chester Nimitz is. You know that. No, I'm just kidding. Okay, good. You want to answer that question? Perfect. Nicely done. I want to meet you afterwards. All right, good. Well done. So Chester Nimitz was the fleet admiral. He was thrust into command of the Pacific Fleet in Pearl Harbor after the invasion of Pearl Harbor. So on December 6th, 1941, he's sitting at his home in Washington, D.C., knowing that the world is not right, having no idea that the next day the Japanese would bomb Pearl Harbor, and he would be ordered out to Pearl Harbor as the fleet commander of the Pacific Fleet. So was he ready? He was ready. Did he have a partner? He had a partner. His wife Kate was his partner. His colleagues were his partners. His entire ecosystem was made up of a network of partners in leadership. So then he gets out to Pearl Harbor and he's faced with loss. This year's 1942. Loss after loss after loss. The Japanese are effectively overrunning the Pacific. The Japanese in June of 1942 tried to deal a death blow to the United States Navy, to the fleet. Their plan was to draw the fleet out from Pearl Harbor, the remaining carriers that existed, and have a two-pronged attack, one to Hawaii and one up to the Aleutian Islands, first stopping at a place called Midway, a little island in the Pacific. Nimitz and his fleet were on their heels. Battleships destroyed, infrastructure destroyed, unable to generate the necessary forces, and watching themselves lose campaign after campaign, evacuate islands, all our partners and allies, across the Pacific. So Japan was the aggressor. We've been on defense. He gets some intelligence that says, we think, we know where they're going to put their carriers to launch the attack. Is it a sure thing? Certainly not. Right? The year is 1942. There are no cell phones. There's no Google. Right? It's 1942. It's not a sure thing. The fleet had just finished a battle in Coral Sea. Lost a carrier. Thousands of lives lost. One of the ships, the Yorktown, and other carriers, limping back to Pearl Harbor. On its way back, the admiral who's in charge of that task force says, I think I can make it back. Don't know when the ship will be ready to fight again. I think it'll take at least 90 days. Trailing an oil slick 20 miles long behind the ship as they move across the Pacific from Coral Sea back to Pearl Harbor. Nimitz hears this, knows that in early June something bad's going to happen. He's got intel. What's he do? The ship arrives, the Yorktown arrives in Pearl Harbor. He's got two carriers, needs a third. Ship comes in, goes into dry dock. He goes down and walks the ship with the repair officer. The guy says, I can do it in 60. Nimitz says, you've got 3. The city of Pearl Harbor, the whole island of Honolulu, commences with rolling blackouts to provide the power that's needed as men flood the ship to fix it. 500-pound bomb had gone through the deck of the carrier, destroyed, gone down 3 decks. The bombs that had gone off around the ship had split the seams of the ship. 3 days. The team did it in 1. Stitched that thing back together. It went to sea, joined the 2 other carriers, and the Battle of Midway turned into a U.S. victory. That turned the tide in the Pacific, and that was the day, that was the event, that was the thing that made everybody think differently about the United States Navy. And our role on the globe to provide deterrence, to make sure the global commons, the blue part of the globe, stays available for all the things that are necessary for trade and for the free movement of peoples so that freedom can be pursued by everybody. So that was the day and that was the moment. And since that time, we've built upon that. And Nimitz knew that he was risking the whole fleet. He knew that he was risking having to sue for peace with the Japanese in the Pacific while America went to fight in Europe against Hitler. He knew that. It wasn't a gamble to him, it was a risk. He took it and he won. The reason you're sitting here today is because of men and women like that who knew how to lead. They were prepared and ready. They had partners in this journey. And they knew the difference between a risk and a gamble. So as you walk away from this Veterans Day, think about those who have gone before you. Say a silent moment of thanks to them. Think about how you're going to do that as you go forward. All right? Got one last thing for you. When I graduated from the Naval Academy, I was lucky enough to have the president at the time, Ronald Reagan, provide the commencement speech and hand me my diploma. And Ronald Reagan is full of great quotes, right? But my favorite of his, which I'm going to read because I can't remember it all the way and I'll mess it up, is something I think you need to think about. Because this torch is being passed. The torch is being passed from our generation, you know, the old guys over here, the Class 81 guys, and you. There's a lot expected of you. Here's what President Reagan said. Freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-thought lessons of how they, in their lifetime, must do the same. If you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men and women were free. There's a lot riding on you, right? You're from Jesuit High School in Tampa. You've got an incredible legacy of success that goes behind you, and your future is very bright. I ask you to think about it, rise to the occasion, and be those men that Reagan expected you to be, that we need you to be, right? Because that's what being men for others really is all about. So thank you very much, and it's great seeing you.